In this video, we're going to talk about how to own your marketing data. And what that means is your business can access the data, it can define it, combine it with other data points, and reuse it without being trapped inside platform dashboards. And what you don't want is to have your marketing platforms be the only place where your marketing history lives. And so the platform dashboards itself, they're not data ownership. So your Google Analytics, your Meta, and your TripAdvisor, say for example, your review platforms, your OTA platforms, booking systems, they can all give you charts, they can give you reports and key metrics. You can even export the data as CSV or Excel. But imagine you wanted to see historical data. Some platform UIs, they may only go back so far. Maybe you want to combine, say, Google Ads and Meta Ads to get a blended CPC or CPA metric, or maybe get a complete total number of bookings across direct, and maybe you've got bookings and OTAs. Maybe you want to have a more flexible view of Google Analytics because the reporting UI in the UI isn't the best. I've seen teams and companies reach out because they want to have better reporting in Google Analytics, for example. And here's a big one. So say you wanted to feed data from your marketing platforms to your AI agent so it has better context each time it answers your team's questions. And so what happens here is that teams, typically what they'll do in order to address those things that I mentioned, they'll export data from their marketing platforms to CSV or Excel, or even worse, to CSV and then to Excel, and then consolidate them, via formulas, import ranges and things like that into a single master document, master spreadsheet. And it's not for me to downplay this process. It can work, especially in the beginning where there's really no other way. When you have weekly meetings, you need to urgently explain to leadership what marketing are up to and try to prove ROI every time. But eventually issues creep in. So it takes too long to build the reports. There's too many reports now to build. It's error prone. You copy the wrong formula, you copy the wrong number, there's a comma in one of the CSV fields, and you've probably been there before, and you're debugging and sometimes just having to start over because you can't find the issue. And even worse, you've already sent the report to the wider team. Even worse than that, you're presenting it in the leadership meeting and someone's calling you out on the wrong number. And then, it's stressful, team morale goes down, and you've got other issues to deal with, right? And so there's the other issue of the numbers not matching. So you have different tools, they count different things. You've got different teams, they'll report supposedly the same metrics in different ways. So they would have their own version of what bookings or revenue means. So for example, you've got GA4, they'll say they've tracked 86 website purchases. Your booking engine, you'll say there's 74 confirmed reservations. And in finance, will say, well, after refunds and calculations, actual bookings are lower than what you're reporting. So when you own the data, you can document all of these things. You can define how to calculate metrics. You'll know who owns the platform or the tool where the data comes from. And you can know any nuances users should be aware of. So say, for example, if you're speaking to finance, bookings to them always means net bookings. And if you're speaking to, say, operations, bookings to them always means gross bookings. So owning your data, it helps you keep teams on the same page. Since you own the data, you own the metric. And so that means you own the logic and the calculation behind the metric. You're free to change or update that or branch that metric into a new one. You can have ads bookings, say that's bookings from ads. You may have another metric called B2B bookings, that's bookings from B2B partners, and so on and so forth. So what does owning data actually mean? And so what it means is you have access to the raw data, you have a stored copy in its own environment, you've got clear metric definitions that you can change, that you can update, you've got reusable clean table where you can source this data from your own data, and then you have agreed sources of truth. And you have documentation that allows humans and AI to understand the metrics, the data, the underlying data much more easily. So it gives you control and it gives you usability. And so our advice is, if you're starting out, don't start by saying, let's collect everything all at once. Start with a question you want answered, and then work backwards from there. So here's some examples that you could ask. Where should we move budget next month? Which campaigns drive real bookings, not just clicks, so on and so forth. So as I mentioned, you start with the question you want answered, then work backwards. And in order to answer those questions, what would happen naturally is that you need to find out where the data lives and turn that into a format that you can use and answer these questions. And so that leads us to the next bit, which is turn those questions into data requirements, right? So if we look at an example, should we increase spend on Meta for summer family holidays? You're focusing on summer family holidays and you're wondering whether you should increase spend on Meta. So in order to answer that properly, you may need the following: meta spend and campaign data, GA4 landing page and conversion data, booking engine reservations, cancellation data, so on and so forth. And so, as you can see, marketing questions will usually need data from more than one system. And this brings us to the next point, which is map where the required data lives. This is where you map the sources, right? So for a travel company, here's a bunch of sources we can grab data from. And for each source, we can capture who owns access, what data is actually available, how can it be extracted, how often does it update, what IDs does it contain, and which business questions can the data support. And so now we know where to look, which teams in the business we can ask for assistance, and what to actually say to them when we do ask. Next step, move the data into your own environment. So once the sources are clear, we load the important data into a place controlled by the business. Now, that could be BigQuery, it can be Snowflake, it can be Redshift, it can be Databricks. Doesn't matter. This is where ownership becomes practical. So the data is no longer just trapped inside those platforms' reporting interfaces. You're free to now process and transform the data into a usable format. Once you have the data in your environment, it's time to model the data into trusted marketing tables. And so raw data isn't enough. We need to have it cleaned and we need to have it reusable. So for example, the way that we model data for our clients, we do it in phases, right? So we load raw data directly to the warehouse. We use BigQuery. So now we have a direct copy of it. We perform some light transformations and cleaning. So we have into a standardized schema that we call staging. So for example, maybe in the raw data in different systems will refer to the same hotel as, say, Dubai Marina Hotel, DXB Marina, or Marina Dubai. We just choose one and stick to it so it stays consistent throughout, and we do that in the staging phase or the staging schema. And then more complex transformations, we have an intermediate schema, and then finally user and AI friendly final models will expose that into a Mart schema. So we'd have models for, say, campaign performance, booking performance, customer acquisition, so on and so forth. So the warehouse itself, that stores the data, and then the model, you can say that it makes it usable. Next step is to define the metrics once. So this is where the trust improves. So you need to define things like booking, confirmed booking, cancelled bookings, revenue, direct bookings, OTA bookings, so on and so forth. So by define, I mean you give it a user-friendly description, other potential aliases that are used within the business, how it's generally calculated, like CPC is total clicks divided by total ad spend. It may be excluding ad platform X because it's, in maintenance mode or something like that. And when we have all reports using the same definitions, we spend less time arguing over the numbers, debating over which number is right and where did you get it from and things like that. And then you spend more time just acting on them. From there, you're free to build dashboards and AI on top of your own data. So once the data is centralized, it's cleaned and it's defined, dashboards and AI agents become more useful. We're not just transforming data on the fly to serve a report or serve a prompt. We've got the clean data models, it's fit for purpose, it's ready to be used by any dashboard or custom AI agent that you build. That means faster performance tracking and reporting. So no more stressful late nighters, trying to collect data for last minute leadership meetings. You got more enhanced AI agents that understand your data. It knows how you define your metrics. And then you can select general things to watch out for. And this is what good looks like. All dashboards, reports, and AI agents, they read from the same trusted data model. So if marketing, say, for example, they ask, which summer campaigns drove the best repeat bookings from UK families? A proper owned data setup will combine ad spend, website behavior, booking data, so on and so forth, to give us an accurate answer. And so to summarize, don't try and own everything at once. Just start with one important decision. Find the data behind it, check where the data lives, move that data into some place where you can control it, define the metrics, and then build from there. So to wrap up, owning your marketing data, it means that your team is not dependent on the platform dashboards to understand performance. Data ownership is when you control the data, you control the definitions and the way that the business uses it.